You're not in love, you're in a trauma bond. And there's a difference. Love makes you feel safe, valued, and free. A trauma bond makes you feel anxious, desperate, and trapped, yet unable to leave. Here's the part that destroys people. You can know the relationship is toxic. You can see the abuse. You can understand intellectually that you should leave. But your nervous system won't let you. Because trauma bonding isn't emotional. It's neurological. It rewires your brain to crave the very thing that's destroying you. This is forbidden knowledge, the kind that explains why you can't just leave, why willpower isn't enough, why you're not weak, you're trapped by biology. These are the 10 signs you're in a trauma bond. And once you recognize them, you can start breaking free. A trauma bond is an emotional attachment formed through cycles of abuse, devaluation, and intermittent reinforcement. It's not love, it's addiction. Your brain becomes dependent on the unpredictable highs and lows of the relationship. And just like any addiction, the substance that's harming you becomes the only thing that feels like relief. Here's what makes trauma bonds so dangerous. They feel like intense love. The highs are euphoric. The connection feels cosmic. The pain feels meaningful, like you're fighting for something real, but you're not. You're caught in a psychological trap designed to keep you dependent on someone who's systematically destroying you. And here's the cruelest part. The stronger the abuse, the stronger the bond. Because your brain is trying to make sense of the pain by convincing you it must mean something. If I'm suffering this much, it must be love. It's not. It's trauma. Let's break down the 10 signs. Sign number 1. The relationship started with intense love bombing. Trauma bonds don't form in healthy relationships. They form in relationships that start too fast, too intense, too perfect. The beginning wasn't a slow build. It was an explosion. They said, "I love you," within weeks. They talked about forever before you'd even had a real conflict. You felt like you'd found your soulmate. That wasn't love. That was setup. Here's how trauma bonds begin. Love bombing floods your brain with dopamine and oxytocin, bonding chemicals that create emotional dependency. You become attached not to who this person actually is, but to how they made you feel in those early days. And once that attachment forms, your brain will do anything to get back to that high, even tolerate abuse. Within a month, they're calling you their future spouse. They've introduced you to their family. You're swept off your feet. Then suddenly, the intensity drops. They're distant, critical, cold, and you're left desperately trying to figure out what you did wrong, how to get back to the person they were in the beginning. The truth? That person in the beginning was a performance. Love bombing is bait, and the withdrawal is the hook. Now you're chasing a version of them that never really existed. Sign number 2. You're walking on eggshells. In a healthy relationship, you feel safe to be yourself. In a trauma bond, you're constantly scanning for danger. What mood are they in? What will set them off today? Did I say the wrong thing? You monitor their tone, their body language, their silence. You're hyper-vigilant, always trying to predict and prevent the next conflict. This isn't love. This is survival mode. Here's what's happening. When you're in a relationship with someone unpredictable, someone who shifts between affection and hostility without warning, your nervous system stays in chronic stress. You're flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, and that stress creates a trauma bond. You wake up and immediately check their energy. Are they happy? Irritated? Your entire day hinges on their mood. You start editing yourself. What you say, what you wear, who you talk to, because being yourself triggers conflict. You become a smaller, quieter version of yourself, just to keep the peace. Walking on eggshells erodes your sense of self. And that hypervigilance? That's your nervous system trying to survive an unpredictable threat. That's trauma bonding. Sign number 3. The cycle of abuse and reconciliation repeats. Trauma bonds thrive on cycles. The pattern is always the same. Tension builds. An explosion happens. Yelling, blaming, cruelty. Then comes the reconciliation. Apologies, promises, affection. Things are good again. You feel hopeful. Then the tension starts building again. And the cycle repeats. This isn't a rough patch. This is the structure of a trauma bond. Here's why this cycle is so addictive. Every time they apologize or show affection after an abusive episode, your brain releases a flood of relief. That relief feels like love, but it's not. It's your nervous system coming down from a threat response. And because the relief is tied to the person who caused the pain, you start to associate them with safety. Even though they're the source of danger, they blow up at you. You're devastated. They ignore you for days. Then suddenly they're sweet again. They apologize. They say it'll never happen again. You feel so relieved that you forgive them instantly. Then the tension creeps back in, and you're right back in the cycle. The truth. The apology isn't genuine change. It's part of the manipulation. Every time you go through this cycle, the trauma bond strengthens. Because your brain learns. Pain from them equals relief from them. You just learned 3 signs of a trauma bond. Love bombing, the setup that hooks you. Walking on eggshells, chronic stress creates dependency, abuse reconciliation cycle. Your brain becomes addicted to the pattern. If you're recognizing these patterns, keep watching. Because the next 7 signs will explain why you can't just leave, and how to finally break free. Most people will never understand this, but you're still here. Which means you're becoming aware of the trap. Keep going. Sign number 4. You defend them to people who care about you. Your friends and family see the abuse. They're worried. They tell you this relationship isn't healthy. And instead of listening, you defend your partner. You don't understand them like I do. They're going through a lot right now. It's not as bad as it looks. You minimize the harm. You make excuses. You protect the person who's hurting you. Here's what's happening. When people outside the relationship express concern, it threatens the bond. Your brain has convinced you that this person is your source of love, safety, and identity. Admitting they're abusive means admitting you've been wrong, that the relationship you've invested so much in is toxic. So instead of facing that, you defend them. You rewrite the narrative to protect the bond. Your best friend says, "I'm worried about you." And instead of agreeing, you get defensive. You just don't see the good parts. You start distancing yourself from anyone who questions the relationship. The damage, defending your abuser, isolates you. The people who care about you pull back. And now the abuser is your only close relationship. That isolation strengthens the trauma bond even further. Sign number 5. You feel like you can't survive without them. This is the core of a trauma bond. The belief that you need this person to survive, not want, need. The thought of leaving triggers panic. Who would you be without them? How would you function? What if no one else ever loves you? The idea of life without them feels impossible, terrifying, like losing a part of yourself. But here's the truth. That's not love. That's dependency. Here's what's happening. Trauma bonds create learned helplessness. The relationship has systematically eroded your confidence, your support system, your sense of self. You've been conditioned to believe you're incapable of surviving without them. You think about leaving, but immediately your mind floods with catastrophic thoughts. I'll be alone forever. I can't handle life without them. The panic is so overwhelming that you stay, not because you're happy, but because the fear of leaving is greater than the pain of staying. The truth. This feeling isn't evidence that you need them. It's evidence that the trauma bond has rewired your sense of self. You survived before them, and you will survive after them. The panic is programming, not reality. Sign number 6. The relationship brings out the worst in you. You're not yourself in this relationship. You're reactive, jealous, controlling. You check their phone. You start fights. You say things you never thought you'd say. You don't recognize who you've become. And the worst part, they use your behavior as proof that you're the problem. See how crazy you are? You're toxic. You need help. Here's what's happening. When you're in a chronically stressful, unpredictable relationship, your nervous system is dysregulated. You're constantly in fight or flight mode. That stress makes you reactive, anxious, hypervigilant. You do things you wouldn't normally do because you're not operating from your rational brain. You're operating from survival mode. And the abuser uses that against you, framing your trauma responses as proof that you're unstable. You've never been jealous before, but in this relationship you're constantly anxious. They've been shady, secretive, they've lied. Your jealousy isn't irrational, it's a response to their behavior, but they flip it. You're so insecure. The damage, you start believing you're the toxic one. You internalize the blame. And now, leaving feels even harder, because you're convinced no one else will tolerate you. The trauma bond convinces you that you're lucky they stay, when the reality is, they've conditioned you to believe you're the problem, so you won't leave. You've now learned 6 signs of a trauma bond. Love bombing to the addictive beginning, walking on eggshells to chronic hypervigilance, abuse reconciliation cycle, to addicted to the pattern, defending your abuser, to isolation strengthens the bond, feeling you can't survive without them to learned helplessness, bringing out your worst to they weaponize your trauma responses. If you're recognizing multiple signs, you're not imagining it. You're in a trauma bond. The final 4 signs will show you exactly how deep the bond goes and what it takes to break free. Keep going. This is the knowledge that saves you. Sign number 7. You've tried to leave multiple times and gone back. This is one of the clearest signs of a trauma bond. You've left before. You've blocked them. You've sworn it's over. But within days or weeks, you're back. Maybe they hoovered you, reached out with apologies, promises, or vulnerability. Maybe you just couldn't handle the withdrawal. Either way, you went back. And now you feel weak, like you have no willpower. But here's the truth. It's not weakness. It's neuroscience. Here's what's happening. Leaving a trauma bond triggers actual withdrawal. Your brain has become dependent on the neurochemical highs and lows of the relationship. When you leave, you experience symptoms similar to drug withdrawal: anxiety, depression, obsessive thoughts, physical cravings. And just like an addict, the easiest way to stop the pain is to go back to the source. You leave. You feel strong at first. Then the withdrawal hits. You can't stop thinking about them. You check their social media obsessively. The pain becomes unbearable. Then they text, "I miss you, I'm sorry." And you go back, not because you believe them, but because the pain of being apart is worse than the pain of being together. The truth, every time you go back, the bond strengthens, because your brain learns. Leaving equals unbearable pain. Returning equals relief. That's classical conditioning, and it makes the next attempt to leave even harder. Sign number 8. You feel responsible for their emotions and well-being. In a trauma bond, you're not just managing your own emotions, you're managing theirs. If they're upset, it's your job to fix it. If they're angry, you need to calm them down. If they're depressed, you have to save them. You've become their emotional regulator, and if you fail, you feel guilty. Here's what's happening. The abuser has trained you to prioritize their emotional state over your own. When they're upset, they make it your problem. They weaponize their pain to control your behavior. Look what you made me do. You're the reason I'm like this. And over time, you internalize that responsibility. You believe that their well-being depends on you. They're having a bad day. You immediately go into fix-it mode. You cancel your plans. You walk on eggshells. You do everything you can to improve their mood, because if you don't, they'll take it out on you. You've become a hostage to their emotional state. The damage, you lose yourself completely. Your needs don't matter. Your entire existence revolves around managing their moods. That's not partnership, that's captivity. Sign number 9. You rationalize, minimize, or deny the abuse. It's not that bad. Everyone has problems. They're just stressed. At least they don't hit me. You've become an expert at explaining away the harm. You compare your situation to worse scenarios to make yours seem tolerable. You focus on the rare good moments and ignore the patterns of abuse. You tell yourself it'll get better, that they'll change. This is cognitive dissonance, and it's a hallmark of trauma bonding. Here's what's happening. Your brain can't reconcile two conflicting truths. I love this person, and this person is hurting me. So to reduce the psychological discomfort, you minimize the abuse. You rewrite the narrative to make it seem less severe. You focus on their potential instead of their actions. Because admitting the full truth, that you're in an abusive relationship, would force you to act. And leaving feels impossible. So denial becomes survival. A friend asks if you're okay. You say, "Well, yeah, we just had a fight." But it wasn't a fight, it was verbal abuse. But calling it a fight feels safer. The truth, minimizing abuse doesn't make it less real. It just makes it harder to escape. Because the more you normalize the harm, the higher your tolerance becomes. You've now learned 9 signs of a trauma bond. Love bombing to the setup, walking on eggshells to hypervigilance, abuse reconciliation cycle to addiction to the pattern, defending your abuser to isolation, can't survive. Without them to learned helplessness, brings out your worst to weaponized trauma responses, tried to leave multiple times, arrow withdrawal, keeps you trapped, responsible for their emotions, arrow codependent captivity, rationalize and minimize, arrow denial, as survival. There's one final sign, and this one is the ultimate test of whether you're in a trauma bond or genuine love. Keep watching. Sign number 10. The thought of leaving triggers panic, not relief. This is the ultimate test. In a healthy relationship, if you imagine leaving and feel sadness, that's normal. But if the thought of leaving triggers full-blown panic, racing heart, catastrophic thoughts, physical terror, that's a trauma bond. Because healthy love doesn't feel like fear. Here's what's happening. The trauma bond has conditioned your nervous system to equate this person with survival. Even though they're the source of your pain, they're also the only source of relief you know. So leaving doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like death. Your brain perceives separation as an existential threat. You think about leaving. Immediately you're flooded with panic. What if I regret it? What if no one else loves me? The fear is so overwhelming that staying, even in a toxic relationship, feels safer than the unknown. So you stay, not because you want to, but because the terror of leaving is greater than the pain of staying. The truth, that panic, is your trauma bond screaming at you to stay. But on the other side of that fear is freedom, healing, yourself, and the only way out is through. Here's what you need to understand. Trauma bonds are not love. They're addiction. They're survival mechanisms. They're your brain trying to make sense of abuse by convincing you it must mean something, but it doesn't. Pain isn't proof of love. Suffering isn't evidence of connection. And staying isn't loyalty. It's captivity. If you recognized multiple signs on this list, you're in a trauma bond. And here's what that means. Leaving won't feel like relief at first. It will feel like withdrawal. You'll doubt yourself. You'll miss them. You'll want to go back. That's normal. That's your nervous system detoxing from an addictive relationship. So what do? First, name it. You're not in love. You're trauma bonded. Recognizing that is the first step to breaking free. Second, go no contact if possible. Every interaction resets the bond. The only way to break a trauma bond is to cut off the supply. Third, get external support. Therapy, support groups, friends who understand trauma bonding. You can't break this bond alone. Fourth, expect withdrawal. The first days and weeks will be brutal. You'll obsess. You'll rationalize going back. That's not evidence you made a mistake. It's evidence the bond was real, and you're breaking it. And finally, understand that you're not weak for staying. You're not stupid. You're not broken. Trauma bonds are designed to trap you. They exploit your capacity for love, your loyalty, your hope. Breaking free doesn't mean you didn't love them. It means you're choosing to love yourself more. If you recognized 3 or more signs on this list, drop a comment right now and type, "I see the bond." Because naming it is the first step. And you're not alone. If this video opened your eyes to what's been happening, hit that like button right now. And if you want more psychology that reveals the hidden patterns keeping you trapped, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because on Hidden Truths Mindset, we don't just teach you about manipulation, we teach you how to recognize it, break free from it, and protect yourself from it. Most channels tell you what to think. We show you what's been done to you and how to undo it. That's the difference. And if you want to understand the exact personality type that creates trauma bonds, watch this video next. It breaks down the dark triad, narcissists, psychopaths, and Machiavellians, the 3 personality traits that create the most dangerous manipulators and predators. Because now that you understand trauma bonds, you need to know who creates them and how to spot them before they trap you again. That video is linked on screen and in the description. Watch it next, because awareness without protection is vulnerability. Trauma bonds can be broken. You can heal, you can leave, and on the other side of that terror is a version of you that's free. Welcome to clarity. You're not trapped anymore. I'll see you in the next one.